a holiday is what she said to me. I need to get away from you. And as I watched her lying next to me, I wished for a holiday too. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. I wanna be there, yeah, yeah. You traveled to so many lands to find a place to end your path. And as you take your next trip, you pray it will be the last. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. I wanna be there, yeah, yeah. We all know you can't find happiness in everyone and everything. We all keep searching for something more, when all you need is to know that home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. I wanna be there, yeah, yeah. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. I wanna be there, yeah, yeah.
Hi there, my name's Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is Monday and it is the 28th of October. Got a very special live stream today. I've been covering the new LR Baggs guitar and the new LR Baggs pickup on the channel for the last few weeks. And today we're going to be joined by Lloyd Baggs and Mike from LR Baggs to take your questions. I have some questions myself, but I'm really keen to get your questions. So the way this is going to work is, please put your question in the chat. I will moderate them. I'll read through them and present them when it's appropriate to Lloyd and Mike. And if you do want to super chat and support the channel, I will bring that to the front of the queue and I'll ask that question straight away. Also, if you are new here, please subscribe and ring the bell. I do a lot of content on acoustic guitars and acoustic guitar amplification. And who better to have on the show to ask about that than Lloyd Baggs and Mike from LR Baggs. Let's say hi without further ado. How are you doing?
Hey, hi everybody. A pleasure to be here.
Thanks
Great.
for
How you
having
doing,
us,
Mike?
Aaron. Doing
No,
good.
thank you so much. This is perfect. I love talking about this. I want to thank you for involving me in these new products in the launch. Let me check out the guitar and the pickup system. And I wanted to bring up a little story first of all, because this is quite big for me. About 10 or 8 years ago, maybe, I was at NAMM. And I went straight into NAMM, and the first place I went to was LR Baggs. And I said to someone at LR Baggs, "Have you got a new Anthem? The new Anthem?" And they said to me, "Well, I don't know, what do you want from a new Anthem?" And I said, "Well, maybe no undersaddle and less stuff in the guitar, but still with a great sound." And they said, "No, we think the Anthem's pretty good as it is." I said, "Yeah, I agree, but that's what I want." Mike remembers it differently. Mike remembers me saying, "I want nothing in my guitar and the sound of an Anthem." But anyway,
I think that's what we all want, isn't it? Nothing in our guitar and a pristine sound.
but that might be asking a bit too much. But this is a big day because you now have the hi-fi duet, which I think is pretty much what I was asking for. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
And we should have a little party and celebration. You've been so busy releasing a guitar and a pickup, and I've just heard someone just messaged me to say that their AEG1 shipped from Sweetwater today.
That's correct.
So just gonna bring my level down slightly. But yeah, so first of all, congratulations.
Well, thank you. We're actually quite thrilled. It's been a 4-year journey to get to this point, and we're thrilled.
Great. So let's get started. I've asked people to put their questions in the chat, and I'll bring them to you. But I'll ask a few questions to get us underway. So first of all, I've got my question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you know what I mean, Lloyd?
I have no. That's a little too cryptic for me
What
today.
came I know it's Monday, right? What came first, the pickup or the guitar?
You mean the hi-fi pickup or the guitar?
The hi-fi duet
The guitar.
or the AG?
The guitar.
Now, was this before the hi-fi?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was right around the same time, but it was separate development. And because you've been working on the guitar for 4 years, but we started working on the hi-fi a long time ago too. So I think
But
they were
not
just
that long. Well,
yeah, it was just
actually,
separate.
I started working on something like the hi-fi about 5 or 6 years ago, and I still have scars on my forehead from running into the wall. And I gave it to Bo. I gave up. I'm a bit of a pit bull, and giving up on something is not something I do lightly. So anyway, this thing had kicked my butt. And I gave it to Bo, and because Bo asked if he could continue, and I said, "Well, sure, good luck, dude." And then I'd forgotten all about that, and I started working on the guitar independently of this thing. And the first few prototypes that we made, proof of concept, were basically an Anthem built into the guitar, and we took that out to Nashville for some testing and got some encouragement. And then the hi-fi came along, and that proved to be as stable as the Anthem, so and a higher fidelity, and so we chose the hi-fi pickups. But of course, the Anthem mic wouldn't fit in or on or around the bridge plate adequately with the hi-fi pickups, so that's what really caused us to create the silo mic.
Okay, thank you. That was the answer I was looking for. Sorry for the cryptic question. I thought I was being clever.
Oh, I'm sure you were, but I wasn't catching up with you.
That's great. Yeah, that's why I want to know, because the hi-fi. I mean, you've been so busy. The hi-fi came out, it feels like yesterday, and I remember saying to Mike, "This is what I wanted, but I want a microphone in there." And then you release a pickup and a guitar at the same time. You must have been so busy working on releasing two products basically at the same time, even though they're related. Of course, they're related. But still, that's a lot to release at once, especially for your company to ship all that at once. Has that created any new challenges for you?
Well, I think even our most young entry-level employee now has gray hair because of it. It was
Also,
really stressful. It was really quite an adventure. And
so you have
planning wasn't 100% planned to happen this way. It just, we tend to work by inspiration. And when things hit us and we jump on it, we find something. Most of the good stuff that we invent comes by just working until we figure out there's some mistake happens, and we go, oh, what happened? And then we figure out what the mistake was, and then that turns into a product.
Right, because the original plan at NAMM was to release these sooner, right? The pickup and then the guitar would have come later. So these arrived at this time, just happened to have released at the same time. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we were biting off a lot more than we really even knew at the time. So yes.
There's also things on the logistical side, like for the hi-fi, for example, we have to make hi-fis for just the retail product, the hi-fi. We have to make it for the hi-fi duet. We make it for OEM business that may have different wire lengths potentially. And then with the guitars, there's 3 different SKUs. It's 3 different guitars. So there's some crossover there, but you're looking at different packaging, different users guides, different video content. But I think we're doing pretty good. We're finally bringing it to market. So
yeah, I think with the guitars being shipped this week and the pickups underway, I think we finally got everything in the chute and getting it out to our customers. And man, we really appreciate the patience that they've shown with us.
All right, let's come over. I'll come over to the chat and I'll bring in a question. All right, here's a nice easy one to get started with. Cody asks, what's the biggest difference between the Anthem and the Hi-Fi Duet?
Well, both pickups. The Anthem is based on the Element undersaddle pickup and the Anthem microphone. The Element undersaddle pickup, I think a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with. It still has, it's the least, I think it's the nicest undersaddle pickup out there, but it does have some undersaddle pickup characteristics. And then the Anthem microphone itself is a pretty cool mic, but it has a more direct sound. The capsule itself is facing the bridge plate. It's only a couple of millimeters from the bridge plate. So you could almost think of the Anthem mic almost like a pickup. It has more ambience than a regular pickup, but it has enough mic presence to be a microphone, and it is a real microphone, but you get more of, it's going to sit in the mix in a different way than the hi-fi, which is, we named it hi-fi because it's greater fidelity than we think pretty much any other pickup out there. So on its own, we think it's a pretty sweet sounding pickup. And then with the microphone, well, what do? You got a great sounding pickup now. How do you add a microphone to it? And the thing that we really settled on was we wanted more ambience from the silo mic than we had from the Anthem mic. And so we turned the capsule around and faced it into the body, which is the biggest, that's where the ambience comes from. So it's not as direct a sound. So I would say the character, they're both really useful because there's so many different kinds of music out there in different venues and things like that. I would say that just to sum it up, the Anthem is going to be more direct and sit in the mix a little more maybe pointedly. And the Hi-Fi Duet is going to be, well, it's the closest thing to a studio mic'd guitar response that we've ever created. And that's, even though you can blend all the way to the hi-fi pickups, they're still more natural sounding than the Element pickups. So I would say the Anthem is, well, they're just for different people. They're both valid, but I think it has more to do with how you play, where you play, and what you want to sound like.
So that's a great lead in. Sorry, Mike, that's a great lead into. I was going to ask you today: is the Hi-Fi Duet from your company a replacement for the Anthem, or would you still recommend the Anthem to some players? You kind of answered that.
Well, that's a really good question. I would say the question that I would ask first is, where you play and what do you want? If you're playing in a loud arena with the drum kit and the bass next to you, you may not want the Hi-Fi Duet because you might disappear because your guitar sounds so normal and natural. If you're playing the Ryman with a bluegrass band, heck yeah, bring it on. So in that sense, the Anthem might be better for the arena guy, and the Duet might be better for the bluegrass or a singer-songwriter or something like that playing the Ryman.
Yeah, I want to add to that. So we've experienced this on a bunch of different environments, not just in our sound room here, but with Molly Tuttle out playing with it, with Seal playing the guitar with his guitarist Zach Wish. What I've found with the Hi-Fi Duet versus the Anthem is that there's kind of a wider range in the mixing stage, because with the Anthem, a lot of people just roll all the way towards the mic because that's the best sound. And some people will blend it to get a little bit more cut from the Element. But what you'll find with the hi-fi is it's a bit more extreme when you push the microphone. So we included a detent at the 50-50 position that you're not going to find with the Anthem system. And it was intentional because we created this system to sound really good in all positions, but that 50-50 mix is probably going to be the most useful for most people.
So I went live last week with the Duet, and I told everyone on the stream that I liked it at 50 and then slightly back on the Hi-Fi Duet. And my favorite Anthem, I'm quite verbal about, is the SL, because I always run it 100% anyway. And with the SL, I have a little bit less stuff in the guitar. It's a little bit more affordable, and I like to recess the controls so I can put a soundhole plug in the guitar. So the SL is my favorite. So that lines up with what you're saying. I usually run the Anthem at 100% mic, and I usually run I've been running the Duet just below the detent. So that makes a lot of sense. But I'm sorry, Lloyd, now I have to ask you then, do you think EQ, it's me you're talking to, do you think EQ can mitigate the two pickups for people live? Or do you think there's a place in the future for some kind of system that does both things? Or do you think we'll always have to make a choice and have that trade-off between a little bit more ambient and natural or a little bit more cutting and direct?
Wow. Well, I go back to venue again. Like, let's just say you can drop a recording studio in the middle of your performance and you're surrounded by pristine recording environment, and you can put a beautiful couple of Neumanns in front of your guitar on a crazy loud stage. That may not actually work very well with the musical environment that you're trying to play your guitar in. So I think we try to offer a spectrum of products that will work for any acoustic musician. But it's so environmentally based that it's like, if you think about golf clubs, you're not going to use a driver to putt, or I think I don't play golf, but it's that's why there's, I don't know, 8 or 9 different kinds of golf clubs that people carry, is that you got to make 8 or 9 different kinds of shots. So I think it's very much like that with amplifying your guitar. I think it has to do entirely with what you play and where you play and what you want.
I totally agree, and I've always thought that, and I've always thought when I record at home with a microphone that sound is so kind of distant and it wouldn't work live, and I always go for that more cutting sound. I guess that's why I was such a fan of the Anthem for so long. But I just want to throw this in just for future thought. I've started running a karaoke. Don't get mad in the chat. I've started running a karaoke on Wednesday nights. Right? There is a reason, but there is a reason behind this. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But last week I decided to sing Everlong, which is one of Mike's favorite songs. Decided to sing Everlong, but the acoustic version, because I can't scream like the Foo Fighters do. And I stood there and sang with that. It was basically a recorded acoustic like you'd have in a studio. And it's coming through the PA speaker, which is just a small EV battery-powered speaker. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? There's that tone right there. So maybe one day I can have that studio tone that cuts through. I guess that's different because that's been processed by an engineer and mixed and mastered, right? But that does carry through. So why can't I have that one day in the future and still have it cut through? But
I'm going to have to think about that some more. But
yes, and please do.
I'd like to relate an experience that I had a few years back when Tom Petty was still alive. I saw them at the Santa Barbara Bowl, which has got a pretty nice sound system. And their guitarist, Scott Thurston, at that point had an I-beam, which at that point was probably the most natural thing we made. And he was playing the I-beam that night. And he was pretty happy with it. But I was out in the audience. I couldn't hear him at all. It was like he might have been like a life-size cutout, doing schlang-a-lang, but I could see him playing, but you couldn't hear him in the mix. So whereas you probably could have picked up an Anthem in that mix. So again, it's a good producer is going to create a bowl in which all the instruments are going to be like a nice salad, right? So you can, they all have their own space and they all have their own place. So I think that's the biggest random thing that most musicians have to deal with is how can they fit into the mix. And I think that it just keeps coming back to where you play and how you play and how loud you play and how many people are on stage with you. And so to answer that question, it was you and a beautifully recorded guitar.
Mm.
That's singer-songwriter, even though
Mm.
it might have been a different song. So that you know, it's just your voice and the guitar, and they do overlap like two circles. There's some overlap in the range, but you're a little over here, you're a little over here sonically. So, but I bet if you surrounded yourself in that same situation by a full electric band, that guitar might have gotten lost.
Mm.
That happened with Tom Petty's setup. If you remember, Lloyd, he was running the M1 and the I-beam together using our iMix. And
Yeah.
I remember correctly, the I-beam was used for what he was hearing on stage, and the M1 was for the house to help cut through
Yeah.
the mix.
Yeah.
So when you were talking earlier about, if you're in a really loud rock band, the Anthem might be more direct and more useful than the hi-fi Duet. Well, you can make the argument that even just a magnetic pickup at that point will serve you better in that situation. And we make a
Yeah.
broad range of pickups so that we try to cover all the bases.
You, that's a great point, Mike. And you know, part of what you just brought up was that so many players use in-ears these days, and you know, if you don't sound very good, it's depressing, and you're not gonna play as well as you could if you're not enjoying what's coming at you. So I think that's a huge part of what we try to do is make systems that will be pleasurable and inspiring to play.
I think I also answered my own question because I said at home, if I record with a mic and no processing, it sounds kind of wishy-washy and distant. But the recording that I played to sing karaoke to has obviously been mastered, mixed, had a professional sound engineer. If you have a professional sound engineer at your gig, running your sound and processing everything through Pro Tools and everything, they can really get down to sculpting that sound. Myself and a lot of people watching show up to venues and just plug almost straight in. And I think
Oh
that's why
yeah.
the Anthem is very popular because it just kind of cut through any room and sounded good. And I think that's why it was so popular. But
Well, you know,
lately,
for sure, it's like your first song is your sound check. That's
yeah,
uh, we really man, we really admire uh, people out there, especially at that level. You know, just trying to break in, make a living, weekend warriors. You know, there's so much random, great clubs, bad clubs, good engineers, not so good engineers, different audiences. I mean, I couldn't do it. That's why I like to be behind the scenes.
a lot of people I speak to, they don't have a sound engineer. Like I said, you literally show up. You might have a small mixer. Like myself, I go straight into a pedal. I'd have to bend down and make those adjustments in a menu
Yeah.
system. So I like systems that just work. I think a lot of pickups can work well with a sound engineer helping you out, but when you're just there by yourself, people talk about plug and play. I think that's what they mean. They want to plug in and just be able to perform with the least amount of issues possible. And I remember you said, I think one of you said about the AEG one. You had that in mind, right? You were thinking about Nashville, Broadway on Nashville.
Yeah, the AEG one at its early inception was basically just going to be a bar guitar. And we have a studio in Nashville, and I spend quite a bit of time there. And man, walking up and down Lower Broad and Second Avenue with all those crazy clubs and the sound that they you know, acoustic guitar was probably never really intended to be played at 130 dB. And yet, you know, there's people up there on stage, and so the engineers just they high pass the heck out of the guitar, and you walk by and Sound, it feels like you're chewing tinfoil. So yeah, that was. But I've always like suffered inside every time I walk by one of those places, trying to think, well, how could we help somebody succeed in that environment and not sound horrible? So that's it was. Do you remember the California Blonde, that acoustic amp way back home? I think it was from
SWR.
SWR. Yeah, it was the California Blonde. They called it the working man's amp, and it was a halfway decent acoustic guitar amp. And that's pretty much what our goal was for the acoustic electric guitar, was make something that sounded good, you could plug in anywhere, and survive. In fact, not only survive but thrive.
The reason I'm laughing is because I remember Summer Nam, sadly no longer with us really, but when I was at Summer Nam walking down Broadway, all you would hear, if no one's been there, it's incredible because you just, there's a band in every bar and there's a bar next to every bar. So as you walk down, you just hear Wagon Wheel through an undersaddled piezo pickup, and then you hear Wagon Wheel through an undersaddled, and then you hear Wagon Wheel, and then you hear Friends in Low Places, and then you hear Wagon Wheel, and all you ever hear is an undersaddled piezo pickup. Because a lot of those, yeah, they're working musicians. They run in there with whatever they have with their guitar. They're there for the tips, and they're performing. They're playing. They're most focused on the song. And you're absolutely right. I mean, most people there probably don't care if they're not musicians. But if you're a musician, you're listening for that. That was all you'd hear. So it'd be interesting to see if that changes over the next 12 months if we go back to Nashville.
Well, I hope so. I think it's going to take a little while longer than that, but we're trying to do our part to help working musicians succeed and have fun. Have fun doing it, and which actually brings up something that I wanted to talk about, is that for the longest time, years and years and years, we didn't talk about this much in the early days, but we felt it. A 12-year-old kid could go into Guitar Center with a happy expectation of plugging into an electric guitar amp, picking one up off the wall, and having a big old grin on his face in about 30 seconds. And then you get a professional guitar player who's been around the block a couple of times. It's not quite the same experience. It's like more of a reluctant, like, I got to go buy a washing machine or something like that. It's not a pleasurable thing. So, for the longest time, we kind of had this secret hope to make playing acoustic guitar live as pleasurable and rewarding, fun and easy as playing an electric guitar. Not that playing electric guitar, any guitar, is easy, but as far as getting sort of a satisfying, useful sound. And so that was a big push with the AEG.
I recently went to Germany to a YouTuber event, and it was mostly electric guitar players. And I was asking them, why don't you do more acoustic content? Why is it all electric guitar? And why do most channels get most views about electric guitar? And a lot of them will say, well, they don't sound good plugged in. A lot of it is that they're harder to play and they don't sound good plugged in is most of the answers that I would get. And it's absolutely true. There's a reputation that all acoustic guitars plugged in sound like a tin can. But that's not been the case for the last kind of 15 years. So I don't know where that really comes from. And I suspect they also like to have distortion and play a lot of metal and stuff too, which is fine.
Oh yeah.
But I do think there's been a barrier there. And I love to plug in and loop at home and run effects and things like that. So I need a good tone. I don't want to like dress up a bad tone. I want to be inspired the minute I plug it in and then loop it and add reverb. And there's so many more effects coming out now. And I want to say again, 2024 has been the best year for acoustic guitar in a long time. There's a lot of people making innovative products. You've got the new guitar, the new pickup. A lot of effects now are starting to incorporate more things for acoustic musicians. And I also see a lot of people doing what I do for a living, which is to go out and play in bars and loop and sing the hits. There's a lot of people doing that now because less and less places can afford or have the space for a band. So I think that's really going to start to ramp up in a big way from what I've seen on online. So
yeah, true.
All right, Boomer, thank you for the super chat. Let's go straight to your question, and I will speed up the questions a bit now because we've done a good introduction there. So thanks for the support, Boomer. He says, for the next time you play Wagon Wheel, okay, and have a good sound, great sounding mix. Okay, I appreciate your support, my friend. He's here most weeks, so thank you. No question. Okay, let's go to the next question on the list then. So, Rex says, a great question from Rex and Matic. Have you experimented with the system, I guess you mean the Hi-Fi Duet, in a big Maple J200 with its unique sound? I currently have an old I-Beam in the J200, also contemplating for my new Yamaha FS9. So I guess the question is, to summarize that as well, have you tried the system in multiple guitars? Are there any guitars that it doesn't play well with, or anything to consider when you're amplifying with the Hi-Fi Duet?
That's a great question. J200 and the Yamaha are both really good guitars. But to be honest, um, some pickups will suck in some guitars. It just happens for some reason we still don't understand physics of the guitar. You could have a wonderful pickup and it just doesn't mate very well with that particular guitar or your style. But we have experimented with the hi-fi pickups, of course, in a J200, and even in, I believe we have a Yamaha similar to that, and it works great in the J200. So um, it's just every once in a while you just get that guitar that pickup doesn't work well in. So I don't want to say, yeah, 100%, we got you, but in our experience, you should have good results.
It must be so much. It's so much to make a pickup system. I mean, you make one pickup system. You don't make 10 different versions of it. You make one Hi-Fi Duet that we might install in any guitar of any Tonewood of any size. It's pretty amazing if it works in even 80%. That would be amazing to me.
Well,
Right?
thank you. You just actually hit on it, Aaron. It's called the bell curve.
Hmm.
Anytime we voice, most of our preamps have a little contour in them. It's like you're not going to get the straight, exact sound off of the transducer every time, um, and you might not want to. So we sculpt the sound of all of our pickups in our systems to be more plug and play, but it's a bell curve.
Hmm.
So it really just comes down to our experience. We use parlor guitars, J200s, Martins, Gibson, Yamaha. When we were doing our feedback test on the hi-fi pickups themselves, we put a element and hi-fi in 20 different guitars before we concluded that the gain before feedback with the hi-fi pickup was comparable with the element. So, but then again, now how
Right.
do you voice this? How do you voice it? And so that's been the subject of many heated arguments with our team. We have about a half a dozen of us that are we got some great guitar players in our shop, and no shortage of opinions about what's good or what's not. And so I think that's part of our strength is we'll just get together and fight it out until we've like we're all kind of like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, is that it? Okay, ship it.
I would say this too for anybody that's interested in purchasing that, to do a little bit of homework before. Um, on 85% of guitars, it's not an issue, but you'll run into guitars that has, tighter X bracing. There might not be sufficient room on the bridge plate. I saw a bridge plate of a Waterloo guitar. It was so short that the pickups would hang over the edge, and that's not ideal.
Hmm.
Um, if somebody's looking into replacing a Taylor ES2 where it has the holes going through the bridge, those holes need to be filled for the hi-fis to make proper contact. So those are kind of the outliers, but for about 85% of guitars, it's pretty straightforward. With that said, by the looks of it, it might seem like a really easy installation. So a lot of people are going to want to do it themselves, but I'll let Lloyd kind of explain a little bit of.
Lloyd,
Yeah.
I hear there's some new Taylors coming out with LR bag systems installed.
Yes.
I just wanted to see what his face.
Yes.
I just wanted to see your expression.
Well, this is great because we started with Taylor when they were in Lemon Grove. We were the first pickup that they actually offered guitars with. And in the late '80s, we had we call it the Black Summer of '87 because we were having an epoxy problem that was creating multiple failures on then our only pickup, the LB6, and we almost went out of business. And at that time, we were selling pickups to Taylor. And one afternoon, Bob called me up and said, "Lloyd, I hate to do this to you, and I said, Bob, I know where you're going. I understand. Thank you for hanging with me for as long as you have. Good luck." And so anyway, we fixed that problem, and here we are today. But I'm just absolutely thrilled that they chose to put our pickup in their heritage, their 50-year anniversary guitar. It's like feels like a real nice full circle. And Bob, I talked to Kurt a couple years ago, and he says he still feels bad about having to drop us, having had to drop us then. And so, I mean, it's been great. We've all gone our different ways, and it all kind of interweaves. But here we are, both at our 50th, and it's kind of like full circle. That beautiful limited edition guitars, and they chose our Element VTC for it.
So, first of all, I had something I wanted to throw in there. Oh yeah, when you first told me about the hi-fi, and I reviewed it last year, Mike told me that the gain before feedback is similar to the Element. But so to follow up with what you were saying a few minutes ago, when you installed that in my Martin OM28 that I had at the time, I didn't find that. I found it was feeding back. But Martins are very... the reason people like Martins is that boomy resonance that they have. I want to just throw in the Duet guitar, because I've done a collaboration with Duet to feature the hi-fi Duet. I actually, in this room, my test is to sit in front of the studio monitors that are in front of me here and turn them up. I actually got better feedback rejection from the hi-fi Duet with the microphone than the Anthem in the Dreadnought that I have the Anthem in. So it really is dependent on the guitar and its construction. It all plays a part in all this.
Yeah, totally. It's like that's you had the one. Well, I don't know if it's the one. There might be 5 or 6 of them out there. Martin guitars that our pickups suck in. In some guitars,
it was fine.
Like
it was fine.
Well, I don't mean suck, but like it's going to go off. It's going to feed back, and we've got Martin. We so many Martin people use our equipment that and Martin's such a great, wonderful guitar. That's part of the bell curve when we voice it. And we used a number of Martin guitars in our tests before we, when we started noticing, hey, this thing's pretty feedback resistant. We didn't believe it for a long time. And it's like, we better be sure of this. And so we spent a couple of months pounding the heck out of every guitar we could get our hands on. And in only one guitar out of about 25, the hi-fi wasn't quite as good as the Element. But every once in a while, you're just going to get a guitar that's going to, for some reason or other, just going to light up. And I'm dealing with a guitar right now in our shop that belongs to an artist that lights up with an LB6. Perhaps the most feedback resistant pickup ever created. This guitar just lights up like a torch, and I'm pulling my hair out trying to figure out how to help this artist. So it happens.
Well, I'll just throw in, it only took me one notch filter to stop the OM from feeding back. And I guess my point was that, again, people like Martins acoustically because they have that wonderful, well, a lot of people like the ones that are boomy and resonate, and you feel them resonating against your body. Yeah. But that means once you try to amplify them, they're resonating against your body and against the whole room, and that's why they can go off. The Duet guitar is a stiffer guitar, and therefore it's much more feedback resistant. So something to bear in mind when you're choosing a stage guitar, and that will bring us on to the AEG1 that I'll show on the screen, because obviously this has been constructed around the pickup, and therefore you've focused on things like feedback resistance, right? Or is that naturally built into the guitar because there's no actual sound hole?
that was part of the design of the guitar. That that thing you see in the middle of the sound hole,
Yeah.
in a way, it's a little bit like a feedback buster. It's actually part of the body structure, but that rim around the sound hole reduces the area of the sound hole like maybe by a quarter, which alters. You know that there's the thing called the pop bottle resonance. It's called the Helmholtz resonance. If you blow into a pop bottle, you get this sound,
Yeah.
and that's what you're hearing in a guitar in the air resonance. So what that thing does in the middle there is it lowers that Helmholtz resonance to around 50 cycles, where it's irrelevant. The pickup's not even operating down there. So um, it's basically just, it's a bit of a feedback buster. So we did take that into effect. And then we also, just for those crazy loud situations, almost everybody, in fact, everybody that's been using these guitars out on stage, holy mackerel. We heard Molly Tuttle live a couple of months ago with this thing. I swear they play acoustic music about as loud as Lenny Kravitz. Um, I have never heard acoustic music played as loud as Molly Tuttle's band, and they were using Molly's using the guitar on the left, the Torrified, and so. But anyway, just for those uh, ex ultra extreme situations, we're including a little ring that slips into that gap between the sound hole plug and the top to just totally kill it if you need it.
I love feedback busters because I loop and I play in noisy restaurants. So it was one day I was looping and someone broke a glass and it was in the loop. So every time the loop went round, you hear a ch.
Oh,
Oh, it's almost part of the loop, which actually could be a cool thing. But now I use them
yeah.
all the time, and they really do mitigate feed. You know, sometimes you walk in front of the speaker to grab your drink, and it prevents the guitar from feeding back. But here's a good question for you guys: what causes acoustic guitar feedback? Is it the sound hole? Is it the top of the guitar? What is actually causing the feedback?
Okay. This is a little convoluted, but this is what the mechanism is. Most people think of resonances in guitars as good things, and they are when they occur in a harmonious manner. And that's the job of a good guitar builder, is they'll put the big resonances in places like, think about tuning a chord, right? A major third is probably your most harmonious chord. So if you think of resonances in guitars, a good guitar builder will intentionally place the resonances of the guitar in places that are harmonious. But a resonance is actually a weakness in the top or the structure. So you got energy from your strings that's trying to push into the guitar, and wherever the resonance happens, that guitar is going to allow more of that resonance to be pulled into the structure, turned into sound. But basically what you're doing is you're converting that mechanical energy into sound and making it go away. So the main places that a guitar is going to feed back are the air resonance, that pop bottle resonance, the the resonance of the top, which is like if you tap on the top, you hear a sound. Like a good guitar, like a Martin or something like that, the top is going to resonate anywhere from 180 to 200, which is like the G string or a little bit below. And then there's usually one other resonance slightly above that can be kind of pesky. So we find, we think of them as the tres caballeros of feedback, and so it's all, but depending on phase, sound pressure level, how much content, reflections, room reflections, it's really difficult, but that's what causes feedback.
Okay. All right, let's go to another question. And I want to ask you more about the guitar in a second, but we'll just do another question here. And thank you to Rosanna for moderating the chat, and Lee as well. Appreciate you guys. will you release a video? This is a good one for Mike. Are you going to release a video comparing the Anthem to the Hi-Fi Duet? I imagine they mean in the same guitar.
Yeah, it needs to be in the same guitar for a fair comparison. I don't have that planned right now, but that's something we can easily do.
Yeah.
You'll notice it's very different. People think that because the concept's the same, pickup mic combo, that they're going to get similar results. They both capture the guitar, but they do it their own way. Like Lloyd was saying earlier, the Anthem's more direct. The microphone's 3 millimeters off the bridge plate. The biggest difference is that the microphone sounds much more like a studio mic experience in the Hi-Fi Duet. And you may or may not want that live, but it's a nice option to have when you're playing in different environments. If you're doing like a TV gig, you might want to do more microphone because it sounds more pleasant. But what I will say is that the pickups sound better in the Hi-Fi Duet, so that gives you a better blending range. The Anthem system, the pickup does not sound as good as the Hi-Fi, but it works well for certain environments. So it's like one of those things like, okay, it's not my favorite sound, but I'll roll towards the pickup because I'm stuck in this environment. One other thing we didn't bring up earlier when it was comparing the feedback between the Anthem and the Hi-Fi Duet is, from my experience, the Hi-Fi pickups are a little bit more sensitive to phase inversion. Would you say that, Lloyd?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. So if you guys do have issues with feedback with the Hi-Fi, first place is to go flip the phase. Shouldn't take any more than 1 notch filter. So if you have a product like the Venue DI, you can take care of feedback, no problem. But yeah, that's a great idea. Now that we have the system, it took us a long time to get all the components, everything ready to go. We just started shipping it 2 weeks ago. So now that we have everything, we can actually do a fair comparison because now we have both the latest tuning on the Hi-Fi Duet, and obviously we've had the Anthem forever. So now that we have the latest tuning, it will be a more fair comparison.
I just want to throw in my experience because you're good enough to let me try these things out early, and I like time to really get my thoughts together. And I will say I still want more time to get all my thoughts together. But from the I don't know, I have to say, like, so first of all, I tried the Bags guitar, and it has an impressive amount of low end for such a thin guitar, which I'm sure I'd like Lloyd to talk about in a second. And I know some players want that. And I then thought I was expecting not to be as impressed with the Hi-Fi Duet. But in the 2 guitars that I've been trying it in, it's actually a bit of a tighter sound. I don't know if it's because of the woods that are on the Sunburst Bags guitar that I've got here, or if it's just because that guitar is voiced to have it more low end. But I really like the sound of the Hi-Fi Duet, and I do find it has that clarity, especially around 40% blend. And I took both guitars. I took my HDC with the Anthem SL, which was one of my go-to systems before, and I didn't really like it anymore. I'm not just saying this because you're here either. I wouldn't say anything, but I really like the sound of the Hi-Fi Duet. I think it's still got that direct sound, but sounds more natural. But again, dependent on the guitar. I think that Duena guitar I have helps that as well because it's a bit of a tight guitar.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting that at all.
You mean on the AEG or the Duet?
I thought that I think because I played the AEG first and it has the low end, that I was expecting to have the same thing on the Hi-Fi Duet. But again, it depends on the guitar. So have you in fact voiced the AEG guitar to have more low end? Is that something you've set out to do? Or is that not?
That's coming from the guitar.
Right.
However, if you remember, we were talking earlier about the bell curve and trying to voice pickups for various guitars. One of the most fun and rewarding parts of creating the electronics for the AEG is we didn't have to voice them for multiple guitars. We could really dial it in for that particular guitar. And I got to say right now, I am so impressed with our contract manufacturer, the Crafter Guitars of
Mm.
Korea. And they've had their own brand for, well, I mean, it's a 3 generation family business. They have been customers of ours for over 30 years. Great people, and they really care, and they're really doing a fantastic job of making the guitars. So the guitars themselves have been very consistent, and so that's allowed us to really pinpoint what we want to do with the electronics and really allow the electronics to, I think, achieve maybe more of their potential than in the bell curve. Like, I mean, every once in a while, you're going to get a guitar that our tuning just, oh man, that's it. It just fits that guitar like a glove.
Mm.
But then again, you know, not every guitar is going to be at the peak of the bell curve. So, you know, we have to be inclusive. But on our AEG, we were able to like pinpoint what we wanted to do really carefully.
So did you voice the Hi-Fi Duet for the AEG, or did you voice the AEG for the Hi-Fi Duet, or did you voice them both together for the final sound?
The guitar came first,
Right, but in the
and
tuning it.
the guitar, the whole point of the guitar was making an acoustic electric guitar that actually sounded pretty decent. And, you know, using that computer terminology, garbage in, garbage out, the guitar had to sound really good to put a good sounding pickup on it. So we put everything into making the guitar sound good.
I guess another way to put my question is, if I took the Hi-Fi Duet out of the AEG guitar and installed, is that the same Hi-Fi Duet that's in the third party option, or have you have you molded everything together to give you a certain sound?
The pickups and the microphone are identical,
Hmm.
but we do have there's some overlap in the way we've tuned things, but there's some specific places that we wanted to enhance and maybe de-enhance in the guitar's response in the electronics. I mean, I think you could probably put that system in most guitars and it'd be okay. But it was really it was fun being able to just like, you know, nail it.
Hmm.
There's a good real world example that we experienced working with Molly Tuttle and her front of house engineer. So she has the Bags guitar with the Hi-Fi Duet, and then she has a pre-war model also with the Hi-Fi Duet. And what we found out, and the reason why she was gravitating towards the AEG for certain songs, is she's doing a claw hammer technique where she's looking for more low end. And what she found was she couldn't get the same low end out of the pre-war guitar without way too many problems. And then it would just get lost in the mix with all the cuts that they had to make to it. So they did definitely have their own EQ curve on the AEG guitar, but it was usable for them. And so that's why she was so inspired to play it for that type of that technique, was because of the bass.
Yeah, I mean, it's all personal preference, isn't it? It's the same thing. I've been applying a high pass filter to the AEG to roll some of that low end off, because that's just the sound that I'm used to. I
Yeah.
remember that as well. I always tell people, give things a chance, because when you get something brand new, I was just thinking the other day, if you come from a basic undersaddle pickup that's in your Gibson when you bought it, and then you plug in something like the AEG, the difference is going to be striking. And some people get so used to, a lot of those people that play on Broadway in Nashville, they're used to that sound. Some of them might even tell you initially they prefer that sound.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
But
yeah.
they may not feel that same way after a few months of playing the other thing. We tend to get used to gear as well, don't we? We get used to a sound. Doesn't mean that it's good or bad. But this stuff is so natural. I said in one of the comparisons, I think this is the most natural analog plugged in sound that I've heard to date. And a lot of people have not heard that. A lot of people are used to a magnetic, a very basic undersaddle with no microphone. So some people, when they first plug this in, might be kind of shocked, like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like my
That's
guitar."
true. Yeah,
Well, it
that's
does.
true.
You just don't know what guitar sounds like. That was my thing
Yeah.
for many years. I didn't know what I used to. I asked myself years ago, "Hang on, what sound do I want? What is the sound that I want live? Is it a mic'd recording? Is it a pickup? More bass, less bass, more mids, less mids? Do I want, what are we actually looking for?" I think it's a great question that people maybe don't ask themselves. What sound do you want to have live? And I think it's an exciting time now for gear, because with IRs and microphones and guitars that actually work like this one does. Because in the past I've had microphones in guitars, but they're unusable. They sound amazing because it's basically a microphone in the guitar. But you can't do anything with it because it just feeds back. I had one once in the sound hole. It sounded like a studio recording, but I couldn't use it live at all. So the reason I like the Bags mics is because they're tucked away and they're voiced to resist that feedback, which is really important live. But,
well, thanks. They got to work. You know,
right.
you know, that's been the whole game all along is trying to create a mic. You know, and most people also don't know the inside of a guitar really isn't a particularly pleasant sounding environment. So just think about trying to record your voice in a shower, right, with a nice microphone. It's kind of
Right.
similar. So the inside of a guitar is kind of a mess. So
And rooms too.
yeah,
Like we'll go from an different. I played last week in a hotel lobby, huge ceiling. It sounds decent, but I can't get it to sound great. And I played in a small bar last Sunday for brunch, sounding fantastic. Small room, low ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's what you plug into as well.
There's other factors in it too. So under saddle pickup, that sound's been so ingrained in our industry that if you just excuse the musician and you're just working with the sound person, I mean, I remember this was a big issue for the Anthem for years, is people would show up at the Anthem and the front of house engineer wasn't expecting that sound. And so it threw off what they're used to applying, like a smile curve, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it took many, many years. And then the Anthem became like such an established product. You see it on stages everywhere, but people were reluctant, that's one thing. When people ask, does something sound better than something else? It's always subjective. In our opinions, the Hi-Fi Duet is easily the best sounding system we've created. And it took us over a decade to improve on what we previously liked, which was the Anthem. We wouldn't have introduced the Hi-Fi Duet if it wasn't a big improvement from our standpoint. But we've also listened to it for many years. So when somebody hears it for the first time in their environment, they're not going to know what to expect. As much as we could put out recordings, video content, you never really know what it's going to be like unless you hear it in your guitar in your playing environment. And I think, Aaron, you told me about that. Like, you needed to get it in front of your monitors in your room to know exactly what the experience is going to be.
Yeah, I've actually really enjoyed covering these releases because I've done it a little bit differently. It's kind of been like a month-long review, and I love it. I could have just got a guitar here, plugged it in, recorded it. Here you go, it's a new Bags guitar. Use my link, buy one. But I love the fact that I've been able to compare them, use it at gigs, like really slowly step into it, which I think, what I was saying earlier, I've got several different pickup systems here. I keep some around just for the channel, and it's great. It's so good to compare them and take them. I mean, the room makes so much difference. I wish someone would make a PA system that measures the room in real time and does the sound for us. I've got these fantastic iLoud speakers from IK Multimedia. I've got they come with a microphone and it measures this room, because this room's not a good room. I'm in a room in an apartment, and I've got as much soundproofing as I can have, but it's not a great room. These speakers are wonderful. They measure the room. They send out a wave, Lloyd. I don't know if you've seen them. Just like sends out. Everyone's doing this now. It's huge in the studio.
Yeah, they do it, and they do it in home
room.
theater too.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
They absolutely game changer. Like, fantastic. I'd love to see that one day come into live sound. Can you imagine? It sends a little pulse
that'd
out,
be awesome.
and it sets the
That'd
room.
be awesome.
But we don't have that right now. We have to do what we have, and that presents a lot of these challenges. I had another super chat. Thanks to Wayne. And actually, I was going to ask you this question too, so that's perfect timing from Wayne. Appreciate the support. Says, how do the different tops of the AEG affect the sound? Because there is the Sitka one that I have here, an Engelmann, and a torrified Sitka. And I imagine the pickup is so sensitive that it will influence the tone that we get from each model, right?
Absolutely. The reason that we've included three different woods, it's in a way, it's almost like three different guitars. The torrified is a frozen cryogenically aged Sitka spruce, and you get a response from it like you would expect from a aged guitar. It's sweeter, it's mellower. Finger picking, like Molly loves that guitar. It's her style. The Sitka is kind of middle of the road. It's a bigger, warmer, richer kind of, like has some huevos to it, and it just really good middle of the road sound. And then the Engelmann would be maybe a little bit better for an electric player because it's kind of spanky and bright and dynamic. And so they're very different. They're very different. You should, if you're thinking about getting an AEG, I would advise you to get your hands on all three because they're going to be different.
Lloyd, I want to try the Engelmann because that's the kind of sound that I like.
Okay.
I've always loved the idea of torrified. Like when they talk about it, it sounds so romantic and wonderful. But I've always sold guitars I bought that are torrified. I prefer that more kind of direct cutting sound that I know like European spruce and Engelmann tend to have. The torrified can be warmer. I don't necessarily want that. So I'm glad you got the three different options, and I'm sure that when you've got that the hi-fi and the mic in there, it's obviously going to translate into the woods. Talk about the Tonewood debate, but obviously when you're miking that up like that, it's going to transfer sonically through the sound.
Oh, certainly.
Right?
I mean, there's you plug those three guitars in, you could tell them apart if you were in the next room. I mean, it's not that subtle. Yeah.
That's the huge thing about the guitar, what Lloyd's been really working on. And this goes back to the 80s when the Chet Atkins guitar came out, and Lloyd was inspired originally by that. And also working on the Acousticaster that Lloyd designed for Godin here's the trade-off. It's like, I think, Lloyd, you said like you could put strings on a block of wood and it will make noise and it's not going to give you problems, but it's going to sound like strings on a block of wood. So the garbage in, garbage out, we were able to create a guitar and a pickup system that are distinct. It's not like just putting an LB6 on an AE guitar and it's kind of homogenized between the different guitars.
Right.
So the fact that we could get that fidelity and actually hear the difference in wood, it might make it a little harder to choose, but over time, as the reviews come out, people are going to be able to share their experience more with the different tone woods that we use.
I always wanted one of those guitars. I always wanted one, but I didn't ever buy one because they were discontinued. I didn't ever buy a used one because I knew I wouldn't be satisfied with the plugged-in tone. So there you go.
That thing blew my mind when I first time I saw it was at the NAMM show, and it was like, oh, somebody created a new category. And the category actually grew out of frustration with trying to play acoustic live. So, of course, here comes the AEG guitar, put an acoustic pickup, acoustic strings on a big block of wood, basically a 2x4, and you could play it at lower broad and rip the paint off the walls, and it's not going to be any problem. So me and a buddy, we were so inspired. The first one was a nylon string because of Chet Atkins, and so me and a buddy went out and bought this cheap classical guitar and cut the sides and bracing off this guitar and neck and glued it onto a big piece of wood. And that was actually my first AEG, which was just a knockoff of the Chet. But I always loved that format. I think it was just brilliant.
Me too. Honestly, I always wanted one. I was looking for a used one for years, but I just thought, you know what? I don't think I'll actually use it because I don't even know what pickup system's in there, but I'm sure it's not a microphone or anything. I've forgotten now. And then there was the Godins as well that was similar. Some of those had the IRs in them, but same thing.
The nylon Chet had a Gibson designed pickup. The steel string, the SST, actually had our LB6 in it.
Really?
Yeah.
But now I wish I played one. I still haven't played an LB6. I
Really?
must play. Yeah, I never play one because I always loved the idea of it, but I never liked the idea of modifying the saddle slot to install the pickup.
Well, back in the day, you had to because all the saddles were 332nd.
Mm.
But it's hard to find a 332nd saddle guitar anymore. Most of them are an eighth of an inch. So in some saddles, the LB6 could almost drop right in.
Mm. All right. Well, maybe I'll start searching Reverb tonight for another Chet Atkins SST. Thanks a lot. Gina, thank you for your support. Appreciate it. Thanks for the great products from LR Bags, and thanks, Aaron, for your honest feedback in your videos. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Thanks for watching. All right. Next question. That was a great one, by the way, about the different tops. And I didn't even think about it, and now I really want to try the other ones. So, does the guitar AEG come in a case or a gig bag? Yes, it does. I've got an unboxing on my channel showing that off. And it's a nice gig bag too, which is cool.
Thank you.
Let's give Gary Roberts a shout out because he ordered the Hi-Fi Duet last week. He just got it. He's going to have it installed. And he's also ordered the guitar. And that's shipped out. He's the one that told me it's shipped out today. So he says, hi, Aaron, Lloyd, and Mike. I'm a long-time Anthem user. I have at least 6 Anthem-equipped guitars. And you know what? He won't mind me sharing this. We've been friends from the internet for years. He came to see me at one of my... I play at Tommy Bahama on 5th Avenue. And he came to see me. And I was playing the Martin HDC with the full Anthem. And I believe that was when he went and bought the same guitar and then put Anthems in his guitars. Just giving myself a pat on the back there. There we go.
Absolutely.
I see in the message he's got 6 Anthem equipped guitars, and so just like I was saying earlier, it's different. I'm not saying that like in our opinion it's a better sound. It's more fidelity. It sounds more like the instrument. But if you're used to hearing the Anthem and that many guitars for that many years, just don't expect that it's going to sound like an Anthem. And
here's the problem: if he does fall in love with the Hi-Fi Duet, he's got to justify. Can you sell him a bulk pack of Hi-Fi Duet?
We might be able to help him out.
Yeah,
bulk like pricing,
taking out like a HELOC for that.
All right, good stuff. This is a great question from Dennis. Can you please give an indication of the expected availability in Europe and the Netherlands for the AEG-1? What's up with that?
Well, like any new venture, we're pretty certain we've got most of the issues or apparent possible issues worked out on the guitar, but we are shipping only to the United States for a little while, just to make sure that everything's working, and so we hope to have them in Europe by next year.
Okay, so they're not there now. So right now it's USA only, right?
Yeah, for a little while, yeah.
Okay, great. I didn't know that, so thanks for that. And then Julian said the same thing, available in Germany. Will there be other versions of the AEG-1 in the future, like a small body guitar? Have you been? I mean, I will say this is the sort of question that I usually ask Lloyd, but I will say the guitar you just shipped out today from Sweetwater. But have you got any thoughts on, like, is the AEG like the definitive, like, this is the body shape of my guitar, or would you be into making other sizes as well in the future?
Well, I don't want to say that we've ever created the definitive anything. And we're a little bit like rust never sleeps. We're always trying to push the limits and create new things. As far as the guitar body shape, I don't actually know yet. As I said, we really try to run more on inspiration. Inspiration and perspiration is kind of our secret. But I wouldn't say we've ever been linear planners. So I can't tell you what we're going to come up with in 5 years. But we just try to, that's one of the beautiful things about working with so many musicians and people like yourself. We don't always know what to build. And so then, we just actually kind of wait on something to give us goosebumps. So I can't answer that question. I think we will obviously, we're committed to the guitar, committed to the guitar line. So I think it's very likely that some other models will appear moving forward. But as of today, I have no idea at all.
Also, Aaron, from Lloyd's guitars back in the 70s that he was building, the shape of this guitar is really close to like his standard guitar that he made back then that you ended up evolving into making as a standard.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not like a brand new design for Lloyd.
Boomer says, can you tell us about the internal crossover of the of the hi-fi duet, and what frequencies are attenuated or removed entirely? I like this. I like this question. The sort of question I would normally ask.
Yeah, yeah. Let me think about this.
It's like showing your poker cards.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Just say I don't know. I don't know.
It's
So
I could say something. It's different than other products because you have to approach things differently for pickups and microphones to work together properly, because they might interact at certain frequencies better than other frequencies. So I don't know if we divulge all the frequencies we cut, but there's about 6 or 7 of us kind of going back and forth as to like how to tune this system on multiple instruments.
there's minimal EQ actually in the hi-fi. The hi-fi itself, hi-fi pickup system, there is some EQ, but it's not like crazy massive. And in the microphone, there's not that much EQ either, but the magic's happening in the crossover and the slope of the crossover and the attenuation, and that is kind of proprietary stuff. But there's boy, the crossover in the hi-fi duet is very different than the Anthem. Not too much in the frequency where the crossover happens, but the way it happens is really different.
Yeah. Well, again, different pickups, right? So when you've got an
Very
undersaddle
much.
versus the hi-fi, you can have a different thing. I've always just wondered though, like in the Anthem and the hi-fi and all these things, are there things like general, like for example, is there like a high pass filter in all your systems? Like, do you put that in there, or is it
Oh,
mostly done
certainly.
mechanically? It is in there. Okay.
Oh, certainly. Like, that low end thud thing that you hear from so many undersaddle pickups, that's always bothered us. So
Right.
we high pass every single one of our systems at about 40 cycles with a second order filter. So you don't get that thudding. I mean, some people like that use it as a kick drum, but we don't like it. It's not it's not a natural effect for an acoustic guitar. So really every single system we have has a high pass in it at about 40 cycles.
Yeah. I think you need
Also,
it so it's built in.
another thing that's important, a differentiation between the Anthem and the hi-fi duet, is with the Anthem, the microphone's really there to correct the pickup. And in the hi-fi duet, the pickups need less correction. So then we're able to find a better balance. Like, so one of the cool things about the duet is it sounds really pleasant in pretty much any different setting on the mix control. And I wouldn't necessarily say that for the Anthem. Personally, I like the sound of the microphone, so I always roll all the way towards the microphone on the Anthem. So yeah, think of that difference. We don't need to correct the pickup as much. And so when we're bringing in the microphone, we can be a little bit more extreme to give you more versatility.
And to lead into that,
And more ambience.
More ambience, that's what I mean, more studio-like experience.
Gary said, for optimal acoustic amplification, mics are placed in front of a guitar. Like, generally, we have microphones externally, right, picking up the whole guitar. So what do you do
Yeah.
with the silo mic to make it sound like that when it's inside the guitar? I guess he means.
That is the secret sauce.
Mm.
There is a very intentional, controlled admittance pattern that we have engineered into the silo microphone to minimize or eliminate a lot of the echoey crap that you hear inside of the guitar. And our whole goal was to make the microphone sound as much like an external mic as we possibly could. And I think if you go to our video that was recorded with Bob Minner and Joe Pisapia in Nashville, where we did a head-to-head with a Neumann microphone in a studio environment with zero EQ and processing on both signals, you'll hear that for yourself.
Gary Hall says Charlie Worsham must have teased us with an Anthem equipped prototype. Can you tell us about that, Mike? What was that? I remember that video. He was playing the guitar. That was the
Lloyd,
that was the AG, right?
He's talking about the original version, and I don't remember what we had in that. To be honest with you, I don't.
Of the
I don't
AEG,
know.
of the AEG?
It's the one you took out to Nashville. It was a different. It was the original one you took to Nashville.
Yeah. That was an Anthem in there.
Was it?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
That was pre hi-fi, I think.
I think
I'm not 100% sure, actually.
It was obvious pre hi-fi Duet, but because
it was hi-fi pickups and maybe an Anthem mic.
Because even though the hi-fi, I mean, in the first year it became our second biggest selling pickup, but the Anthem's still our flagship up at that point.
Yeah.
So if we're going to come out with a guitar, the microphone's such a big part of our company now. It'd be weird to come out with a guitar without some form of true mic technology, especially when we're like trying to present this thing as this sounds incredible plugged in. It's not a compromise. The whole purpose of the guitar is just to sound really good live. And most AE guitars, there's a compromise with that so that you can have something that is easier to work with, but it doesn't usually sound as good live. So originally the Anthem, that was our flagship product. That's the best sounding product we had. And so that's what we put in there. But fortunately, the development of the hi-fi and the success allowed us to, Lloyd, you should tell him how many hours you put into creating the silo microphone since this time. I think like halfway through the project, you said you had over 1,000 hours in it, and that was a long time ago. So like,
yeah, the thing that was so crazy about the silo microphone is that a big part of the success of the microphone is we had to isolate it mechanically from the body of the guitar so that the capsule wouldn't receive any mechanical influence. It just had to be all air. So we had to create this shock mount. And then, like as I said before, sometimes you make a mistake and something works, or you just try something and it works, but you don't know why, and then you're just chasing your tail for months trying to figure it out. So within the microphone, we had to make something that could take you from that first thing we made that worked, that was basically felt, tape, crazy glue, some rubber we call flubber, and a microphone capsule, and turn that into something that you could stick in your guitar successfully. And so there it is. And one of the things that kept driving us nuts is we couldn't get more than 3 or 4 of these things to do the same thing in a row. And we'd get some great ones and then some ones that were terrible. And then we finally tracked it down to the way we were holding the shock mount inside of the housing. And literally we found that 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch would make a difference in the response of the microphone. So we were having these things we were prototyping these things ourselves and trying to make them ourselves. And finally we had to actually go to full production to create the capsule, shock mount, everything, had it molded, everything, just to test, because we couldn't control the tolerances tightly enough with our own processes. So the housing on this capsule and the microphone mount are created to plus and minus 1/2 of a thousandth of an inch in tolerance. So now when we assemble them, that gives us a ton of room to be inside of that 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch that it takes to make the microphone go from good to terrible. And so then we had to create a testing system that would actually, we chirp the microphone with full spectrum and then record it on a computer to analyze the chirp. And we've got a very tight window that we allow the microphone to be used.
I have
That's a
an
great
image.
That's a
if you
great
guys
picture
want to
there.
see.
Oh yeah, you've got it. Yeah. I'll put
So
you full
that-
screen. Hang on.
Yeah.
So that shiny gold thing, that's a brass, that's a 2-piece brass mic mount. The capsule's housed inside there. And then that lighter gray thing is the mic mount, which we call flubber, which is a proprietary elastomer that has this great damping characteristic. And it's held on each edge of that by those 2 little teeth. And then there's an inside and an outside of this capsule that are pressed together. But the holes need to line up, because if the holes don't line up, it alters the admittance pattern to the capsule. This thing's nuts, but we did it.
Wow. So that's a really great picture, actually. Let me just show the picture on the website again. This one. So is it right? Am I right to say that it sounds more natural and ambient because the microphone itself is further away from the bridge plate? Is that an arbitrary way of saying it? Does that have
No,
some
not at all.
influence?
No, not at all. The ambience. Well, if you get close enough to a bridge plate, yeah, I remember one time taking a nice microphone and suspending it about as close as I could to the top of a guitar, like a 1/2 millimeter away. And, it sounded just like a contact pickup on that spot.
Wow.
And with maybe a little ambience, but basically it just sounded like a contact pickup because it was capturing just that spot. So we used it's what's called a pressure zone microphone for the Anthem, which gave a wider reach, but it was still pretty direct. It was still capturing a lot of what was going on the bridge plate. So you can almost think of the Anthem microphone almost like a bridge plate pickup. So that's why it's so direct and kind of, it's direct. With the Anthem microphone, but with the silo microphone, we were after more ambience. So we turned it around facing into the box. But then we were able to use the admittance, custom admittance pattern in combination with the admittance pattern of the capsule. And the capsule, by the way, is a pretty high-end little capsule. And that admittance pattern does a pretty good job of eliminating the garbage that's floating around inside of an acoustic guitar.
It's hard to find a really good sounding acoustic guitar. It really is. And and then amplifying that as well. If it brings out those things you don't like, then you're kind of there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all have to be a little bit nuts to be in this business, like you being on your end of the practitioner side, us making pickups for it. We're really just trying to make, that plug and play experience. That, that's what our company is all about, is just trying to make it easy and fun and enjoyable and to play live acoustics successfully. And that's really where that AEG came from. It's like, you really don't have to know anything to plug it in and get a good sound. In most places.
Some people, they think that when you try to make things simple, they think that it's a compromise. When we introduced the Anthem, this came after the iMix and after the dual source that gave you some stereo output options, low cuts, different things. Well, those pickups, they needed more work. The Anthem has a very sophisticated processor and preamp built into it. And so when we came out with just a mono signal out, people were complaining. They were saying, well, I want to mix the pickup and the microphone separately. And what we understood at the time is the vast majority of people that would have done that, it would have sounded terrible. There's certain things that we needed to do to get it to sound good. And over time, it's proven to be really successful because it's plug and play and it sounds better than what came out prior to it. I remember early on in this industry talking to the really sophisticated players. They used to bring up the pendulum. Have you guys, Lloyd's familiar? But
Yeah.
a lot of the guys, we call them tweakers. They're always tweaking their sound. They're EQing things separately. And over time, things have gotten so good that it's not necessary.
Like if you're really, really a great engineer and you really know what you're doing, you got two sources in your guitar, you'll eventually get there. But that's what the hi-fi duet in the AEG is. We've basically done, I mean, what you're getting is our taste. It's our take on it. But hopefully, we've tried to make it as universal and great sounding as possible. So you won't have the options of doing the micro tuning on each of the transducers that we did. But boy, oh boy, it was no small task to get them to play nicely together. So, I mean, I've got nothing but respect for people that want to roll their own because that's where we started. And, we're just honestly just trying to make it easier you see a lot of people, musicians aren't necessarily tech people. A lot of times they're entertainers and they have something in their heart they have to say. They express it with music, and we just want our stuff to get out of the way so they can do what they do and enjoy it.
Some might argue it's better not to be a tech, but I mean, some could argue to me that if you just went out and played a basic undersaddle passive pickup and didn't even think about this stuff, you might have written more songs and developed as a musician more.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's funny. I love having this channel and this outlet to talk about this stuff. But when I go to someone came to see me last week, and I plug straight into the pedal and straight into the speaker. And I said to them, it's funny because out of necessity, I have to travel light anyway because I'm taking the subway a lot of the time to save money on parking and cabs. And so actually, I do like to plug in and go, even though I talk a lot about EQ and IRs and gear and pedals. I also like to just plug in and get going. The only thing is there are some things like now I'm using in-ears a lot. It would be quite nice to have like more microphone or IR in the in-ears and then maybe less out the front or in the monitor. But again, it'll just be so much more complicated if I'm there by myself to even dial that stuff in, and then you won't know what it sounds like to the people out the front. So I get it. It's really about keeping things simple and just be able to get on with the job. And you can still use external EQ, right, to shape these things as well.
Oh, sure.
People should do for each room as well.
John said. Sorry.
No, I was saying John agreed earlier that we are the engineer. We're the engineer, the singer, the guitarist, the roadie, we're everything, right? Everything in one. So you don't want to have too much stuff to do around that.
Well, there is also something that we struggle with every day that I think is a factor in what we can accomplish. If you stop to think about, like, even impulse responses and like having more, if you've got an in-ear system and you're looking for more of the mic in the in-ear and a little less, more pickup in the house, those systems are entirely doable. But at the same time, the thing that we struggle with is we have X amount of resources and Y amount of customers. And like software is monstrously expensive to program. And we're not Apple. We don't have a billion customers and we don't have the income stream. People in the music business don't all have that kind of, music business is kind of a small business. And so, unfortunately, we are still having to make compromises. And, to us, good engineering is making as few compromises as possible. But you know, like anything's possible, but we're always still shooting for the stars. But there are some realities of our market that make it a little more difficult to invest in certain things, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm just reading through the questions because there's a delay on YouTube. A lot of the questions that I'm reading, we've already kind of answered and covered already. So I will just say this: if I don't read your question out and you really want me to present it, then send it as a super chat and I will. But otherwise, I can't read every single question. We'll run out of time. So I think the ones I'm skipping over, I think we've basically covered, or they're way off topic. So thanks for that. I'm still reading through them. Okay. Yeah, you see, like Kevin, we've already kind of covered this. What was the thinking behind the design of the guitar? Was it designed for the hi-fi duet or vice versa? That's kind of what I asked earlier about. Did you voice it for the guitar or the pickup? I'm still reading here. And while I'm reading this, Lloyd, where are you right now? Is this the workshop where you created these products, by the way, or do you do them at the HQ?
Kind of both, but this is my home workshop. I've got a wood shop here, and on the other side of the wall, I've got a bit of a machine shop. So was fortunate to when we moved here to Napomo, I was fortunate enough to find a place with 1,000 square foot RV barn on it. So I've got my shop in here. So all of my guitar building, wood building, that kind of stuff I do here. And most of the pickup work is done at our factory.
If anyone just tunes in and doesn't know who you are, they'll assume we're talking about bicycles. You know, I just realized you've got about 20 bicycles.
Yeah, I've been known to be on a bike or two.
All right. Here's a good question. I want to ask you about installation because I have a feeling that when people have told me the hi-fi is easy to install, you just use the jig. But I have a feeling it might be easier to install the Anthem than the hi-fi Duet. And Rex says, will you be offering training for guitar techs for installing the new system? So what are your thoughts on the installation process for the hi-fi Duet? Is it something that we can just buy and do ourselves? Or is there anything to be aware of? Any tips and tricks you can give us as well?
Wow. That subject kind of gives me hives because the Anthem the hi-fi on the surface looks like it should be, caveman simple. And it's in most cases it is. In most cases, if you put it in the desired in the average location, bell curve location that we found that works very well, you're going to get good results with it. But the bridge plate has to be perfectly level and flat. So in that sense, it's a little similar to getting a good flat saddle slot with an under saddle pickup. The entire success of the hi-fi pickup has got to do with the amount of drive that's imparted to it from the bridge plate. And so it's got a peel and stick adhesive that we designed the flexibility of the pickup to complement. But if you do not get 100% adhesion with the adhesive on the bridge plate, it's going to sound like crap. And 90% is not going to work. So that's why a lot of people do install it themselves, and a lot of people are having successes with it. But it's still, I still feel more comfortable if people would take it to a qualified professional installer who's got some experience with it, because with a professional installer, if they have a problem, they have a vocabulary and a language and experience that we can communicate with them quickly and solve the problem. But if you're a guy at home putting this thing in, it's more difficult for us to help you.
Well, that leads us nicely into the next question because Red Hat is here. Red Hat is Aaron Markson, who's got a great name. Aaron's a great name. And and he received the hi-fi Duet last week, and he's installed it. And I was asking him what he thought about it, and he's actually here in the chat. So let's bring on some of his things here. He says, I installed the Hi-Fi Duet in a guitar that previously had the Anthem system. I haven't used it live yet, but my first impression, Duet is far more natural and allows for more blends that sound great. Now he goes on to say, Hi-Fi alone sounds great. I know he has that in a guitar already. But blending even 25 to 50% of the silo mic makes for a fantastic blend of natural and yet punchy and should work well in most live environments. And I said to him, yes, that was exactly what I said on the live stream last Monday. So I'm glad that we agree on that.
And exactly our goal too, by the way.
Now he does bring up one thing that I also agree with. I mean, I guess when your name's Aaron, you agree on almost everything. It says, I would love to see bags sell feedback busters that have control cutouts for the various pickups you have. Have you ever entertained this idea? You know, Gibson just started selling those. They sell a soundhole plug with a cutout for the Anthem. I guess it's a generic cutout, but it actually fits the Anthem. Yeah, you know, I said earlier I like to use them, and I said earlier the reason I like the SL is because I can actually recess the controls and still use them while unplugging the sound hole. I feel like with the Hi-Fi Duet, that control module is a bit longer. Mike said that I can recess it, but it's hard to offer these with the cutouts because all sound holes are slightly different. I've got like 30 of these. Yeah. In fact, Martin Guitar just released these. A hot tip for you all at like Martin Guitars: you could not buy a sound hole plug that fit a Martin guitar before like this. They've just started to sell these rubber ones on their website. It fits perfectly in the guitar. Yeah, you had to modify them. So I guess I mean what can people do if they want to use them? I guess they would just have to cut out the thing themselves or recess the controls, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And make sure when you're using a pocket knife to always cut away from your hand.
Is that from experience?
Instead of towards it. Of course. Hey, y'all, watch this.
I don't want to see. But do you try, like when you're doing your tests and things, and you know, what are your thoughts on these? I mean, do you recommend these? Do you try them? Do you think it changes the way that the pickup? I know I've tried some mics in the sound hole before, and I feel like the plug almost reflects the mic into the, it reflects the sound back onto the microphone. So what do you, as a company, do you recommend? You know, do you advise people use these, or would you rather they went for EQ first and phase, or what are your thoughts on these sound hole plugs?
Oh, I think it's an unfortunate artifact of our craft that we're doing our very best to eliminate the need for. Haven't gotten there yet. With the Anthem mic and the Silo mic, I think you've used that sound hole plug in the AEG, right, Aaron?
I like it. I leave it in there now.
It doesn't with that mic back in the body. It doesn't seem to kill the sound as much. I look at it a bit like a notch, like, you know, trying to notches kind of tend to throw a little baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And a sound hole plug can tend to, in some guitars, some pickups can do the same thing. I think the Anthem and especially the Hi-Fi are a little more lenient. They don't get ruined as much by the sound hole plug if you need one.
What I noticed with the AEG sound hole plug, my experience is it brings down the volume acoustically a bit, but it takes out some of more extraneous low frequency content.
Yeah.
So it actually, for some people, might actually be a benefit for the sound that they're going for. Like Aaron, you were saying, you high pass it. You probably even high pass it with the sound hole plug in it, right? From the experience I have with the Sunburst version, there's just a lot of low end there, and I've always high pass guitars anyway. Like I used to high pass Dreadnoughts at 120. You know, I just don't want that. I want a clean sound, and again, depending on the room. Like I took that to Irish pub, and and they have like the little speakers all around the bar, and then they have a big speaker as a monitor suspended on the ceiling, which is far away from you. It's just none of that is optimal at all. So I just want to take that low end NG out, you know. It's funny that we're talking about it on a guitar that's 2.5 inches thick. Like That, and actually, when I learned that from Molly Tuttle's front of house engineer, he's really good, by the way, really good at
Yeah,
what he
this guy's
does.
great. This guy's
Uh,
great.
so when I was seeing the EQ cuts, and I was like, you wouldn't expect that on such a thin-bodied instrument, and I think that's a testament to the neck support system. I don't even think we've discussed that yet, right, Lloyd? Like, there's a reason why the
No.
guitar works the way it does.
Yeah. Would you like me
Kind
to
of the
talk
key.
about that a little bit?
I would. Let me just see if there's another thing to wrap this part up again. No, I think that's the last thing that he said. Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about the guitar then. So I've commented about the natural sound and at the low end. So can you tell us about the choices that you made in designing the guitar? It'd be great.
But certainly. When we decided to do another acoustic electric guitar, or at least look into the possibility, I started building again here in this shop, and my first couple of attempts were pretty lackluster, even though I put a really nice big acoustic, scallop brace top like I would on any dreadnought or anything. Um, they were okay, but it didn't really float my boat. And I've always been interested why, I never could quite accept that a small guitar couldn't have some nice low end. Um, so I had focused on making a really strong neck support. And in the industry, acoustic electric guitars are kind of referred to as nut bowls because first project you get in woodshop back in high school, they give you a chunk of mahogany and a chisel, and you make this bowl for nuts for your mom. And so most acoustic electrics, you hollow out a chunk of mahogany and you put an acoustic top on it. They all, they're not exactly sounding acoustic. So my first ones I built like that, and I was really disappointed. So I got this kind of cheap triple O guitar body or a double O, and I sliced it so the side was only like 2 inches thick, and reinforced the edges so they were really stiff like the guitar I was building. And then I glued the original back onto the thing, and the neck was really wiggly, but man, the sound was there. I was like, okay, this little acoustic guitar is only like about 2.5 inches thick, and I thought, okay, what's going on here? And then, the funny thing, all the while, all the acoustic guitars that I ever built back in the day, the full acoustics, I never really did understand the role of the back, other than just something to hold the neck from caving into the top. But it was this guitar that opened my eyes to how important the back of an acoustic guitar really is in the overall sound. So I thought, okay, well, let's make a full vibrating back on an acoustic electric guitar. But then how are you going to keep the neck from caving into the body? It's like, since the back is actually what's holding the neck from caving in, you got to support, you have to support the neck. So that's when we came up with this neck support system. And I have a guitar body here. So this is the back of the guitar. It's rosewood, solid rosewood, braced, just like an acoustic guitar back would normally be. It's got a little arch in it, and this is the port to get to the electronics. It's got a little thing that screws in here. But the thing that all makes us all work, this is the inside of the guitar. You can see the kind of scallop bracing pattern, and we voiced it specifically to do some things we wanted it to. But you can see this thing here, this is attached to the waist over here and over here, and it floats completely independent of the back and the top, but it is what is anchoring the neck, and it's made in one piece with this beautiful poplar plywood body that is very strong and stable. And this whole thing is machined, a CNC machined out of a solid block of this sustainable wood. And it's the neck support that holds the neck. So the back and the top don't have to. That gave us complete freedom to do whatever we wanted to do with tuning the back and the top independently of holding the neck. So we're no longer driving in handcuffs, and we could voice the back to support the acoustic and resonate right along with the top, sing along nicely. So that's where the beautiful, although quiet, it's a beautiful acoustic sound that the instrument has intrinsically. So once we created the guitar that could do that, then we were free to put a pickup system on there that would be faithful to the instrument.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Is that something that's, to your knowledge, that's been done before? Because I've never heard of that before. The way that supports it from the side, you can see it in the picture. That structural support.
Since then, I've seen a few acoustic builders. I don't know if I've seen, I don't know of anybody in the States that's doing it, but I follow a bunch of guitar builders on Instagram, and I've seen a few acoustic builders that have something like that built into their body. But I've never seen that done in an acoustic. I've never seen it done in an acoustic electric, and certainly not as a unitary part of the body, which is what our patent is actually about. Our patent application, I should say, is the unitary neck support. And we thought about building a neck support independent of that in this guitar, but it seemed a pretty arduous task. So it just worked out that we made the body so we could build the neck support right into the body.
And then how do you decide about the controls? I was just thinking, like I mentioned about the low end. I mean, you could have added more controls. You could have added a bass, mid, treble, tuner. You know, you could have added a lot. You know, companies have done that, right? And some people think that's a good thing, and some people think it's too much choice. But what were your thoughts behind that? I mean, I guess just keeping it simple, right? Just plug in, get the sound, and go. Was that your thought behind that?
Well, we to use maybe a bad analogy, we're trying to be more like Mac than Windows.
Okay.
And honestly, trying to decide on the controls and where they're going to be, what they're going to do, how many we need, how many we can get away with. That's one of the biggest points of discussion our team ever has. And, lots of heated arguments about that. And, but ultimately we're trying to be, have you ever heard of a thing called Occam's razor?
No.
It's a saying, Latin, I think. The simplest way to do anything is always the best. And so we always try to boil things down to their essence and just do that. So we just try to keep it simple and useful. And, we don't get it. We can't, again, back to the bell curve. We wish we could please everyone with just the right amount of everything, but ultimately we've got to make some decision and just run with it.
But that's also why you have different products, and that's also why you got me thinking about, you just said all that. I'm thinking about the Voiceprint DI. A customer can also buy the Voiceprint DI and EQ with all the EQ in there as well to shape whatever sound they want. It just depends on your needs and tastes, right?
True. Yeah.
That reminds me, Lloyd, Dan Tyminski has been playing the hi-fi duet. He's from Union Station. He's the singer. Most people are familiar. it's funny that you bring that up. He has a song. I just want to plug this song because the lyrics are awesome. But he's got a song about Occam's razor.
Oh, really?
Super, super clever lyrics. I
Oh,
absolutely love that song.
What rhymes
oh,
with
that's
that?
great.
I think he talks about shaving with Occam's razor.
Good close shave, huh?
Yeah.
Gary said, "Will the hi-fi continue to be marketed as a standalone option? Duet is another." Yeah, because the hi-fi will still be around, and it is a cheaper option for those that want that, right? But he also
Oh, of
says,
course.
"This is a good question. Why is there no tone control on the Duet, but the AEG1 has a tone control?"
Space.
That's what it comes down to, I
With
guess.
the AEG, we're able to design it to fit a certain space.
Hmm.
And we actually had that third control be a number of things. You know, it wasn't always a tone control. But the tone
Yeah.
control is pretty popular on the regular hi-fi.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all about balance. Like the Anthem, for example, has a certain footprint. The hi-fi Duet has an even smaller footprint than the Anthem. And to get that kind of circuitry into such a small footprint is really, really challenging. And I think we have cell phone technology to thank for being able to do that these days.
Yeah.
But it's all about balance, you know, like how much are you going to put on the guitar versus, you know, trying to keep it simple and then people can use those options outboard. One thing I wanted to say about that, like came up earlier, is you were talking about having a lot of features on the guitar, bass, mid, treble. You'll find that's typically on actually less expensive, kind of lower grade products. They throw the feature set at you to make up for maybe the system not sounding as good or being as high quality. So we do include things when it's appropriate, but we also try to, you know, respect the instrument and try to keep things small and compact.
Something I've always thought about for years is how about having like an app control. I mean, the app for the Voiceprint is an awesome app. So if you
Thank
could
you.
have, the only thing I don't like about digital is the way it can eat batteries. But if let's say, for example, the new pickup or the guitar, I could connect with my phone, dial in all that stuff, the 10-band EQ, really go in there and tailor the sound to what I want it to be, and then store it, and then just have a volume and a tone on the guitar itself. So I could kind of, you either never touch that app and just use it as it is now, or you can go in there and actually shape what you want it to be. I've been saying that to acoustic guitar builders for years. The only thing I wouldn't like is if it meant less battery life. For me, battery life is really important. And of course, these are analog systems, so they're over 100 hours, right? Which is very important to me.
Oh, yeah.
But have you ever thought about that? Like bringing digital and analog together? So you have analog, but you could tweak it in the guitar and store it permanently.
To a certain, yeah. You're asking some great questions, and I love this idea. But I have a question for you and your viewers. If so you talked about battery life in digital. It is an issue. And to get the better sound quality, you need higher processing speed, which sucks more current, which kills your batteries faster. So I'm wondering how you and your readers your listeners here might react to a system that has rechargeable batteries like those in a digital camera that like would be USB-C rechargeable, and instead of recharging your guitar, you'd have maybe 2 or 3 batteries that would be good for 20, 30 hours each. And you just pop them in, pop them out, and you've got your USB-C. Everybody's got USB-Cs in their kitchen drawer, and it's the same as your phone. And I'm wondering how you would feel about that, enabling the digital technology rather than having to recharge your guitar.
Apple just released new computers today, and now all their accessories, like their mouse, they're all USB-C now. So now everything I own pretty much is USB-C. That's a big deal for the industry, although it's still on the
I
bottom.
love
It's still on the bottom of the mouse.
Oh.
But anyway, that's huge. And also, I really want to try. There's a new trans acoustic guitar from Yamaha with like the looper and stuff built in. I don't know if you've seen it. That's charging from a contact, like a magnetic charger that goes on the guitar and charges through that. like a MacBook does. For me, 30 hours isn't enough. But look, I've been playing lately about 6 nights a week. Well, I guess karaoke doesn't count because I'm not playing guitar, but 5 nights a week, 3 or 4 hours a night. I don't want to have to change the battery every week. I like systems where the battery life is over 100 hours. Even then, I find myself every 2 months having to change the battery. So for me, it's just a big thing. I just wonder if there's a way with low energy Bluetooth, if you can program a DSP controller in a guitar, and then when you disconnect from it, it's running at very low power and not, it's like it's stamping in the sounds and then it's kind of not doing much else. I guess not, right? It's always going to be running alongside it.
It's like, it's the processor. The processor is doing something, and it's just going to take some juice while it's happening. So, yeah, I was wondering, with a digital camera, like I used to shoot weddings, and I wouldn't leave my house without half a dozen batteries in my camera. And my typical wedding would be 4 batteries. And I'm just watching the battery, and it's getting low, and I pop it out.
It's
And,
horrible, isn't it?
yeah, it's not any fun, but
That's what it is.
it allowed the performance
Yeah.
of the camera system that I needed to do the job that I was doing.
Lee, that's what I meant. Lee said induction charge. It has an induction charger, clips on the side. People are scared. Look, people are scared of technology with acoustic guitars. People say, well, and
That's true.
Same with you. If you make an app for a pickup, you've then got to maintain that app. There's a new update today for iOS. There's a new phone every year. You've got to make sure your app is always going to be compatible. But I don't see that as a boundary. I mean, apps are getting more and more used now, aren't they? One more thing, though. One thing I just came to mind. Years ago, Yamaha made a pedal with IRs in it. Years ago. And it had a fake it had a dummy battery. And you actually, when you plugged into this pedal, it powered the guitar.
Now, I remember that. Yeah.
Now, you guys make great pedals, so maybe in the future, if you're making a guitar now, if you made an all-in-one multi-effects acoustic pedal, which I think there's a gap for in the market right now because most pedals are generic electric pedals, if you made that, imagine if that could also power your pickup systems as well. Because every time I play a gig, I plug into my pedal. So if your pedal gave me what I needed for a gig, then I would never have to worry about the battery at all. And it could work alongside the battery as a secondary source of power. Yeah, you can have that for free, Lloyd.
Yeah, interesting idea. Thank you.
One of the issues with, charging the guitar, I mean, the main issue is when you run out, there's nothing you can do. So, like Lloyd's talking about the camera system, there's other things. Like I'm on the Duet system with all my power tools. I have so many of those batteries. They're extremely expensive. Extremely expensive, but the show could keep going. You just pop in a new battery, and 30 hours is a long time, actually.
That's one heck of a long show.
That's a long show. So I don't know.
I know.
I just don't like the idea of charging the instrument because once it's out, you're stuck.
Actually, I think dummy batteries will work with anything, wouldn't they? If you got a dummy battery and a power source, you could power the guitar from it. I don't know. It's a nice option, but it's another thing to plug in. I love the idea of an all-in-one acoustic pedal with effects that also powers the guitar, so you never have to think about it. And then the battery works as a backup to that. So
that would be a nice thing.
I'm dreaming again.
That's good.
That's why
that's where all this stuff comes from.
Aaron, when I first met you, that's why I was saying, like, you wanted the guitar to sound perfect, but nothing in it. That was me kind of teasing. Like, there's, I remember learning this from somebody that helps us with our business, saying that there's the ideal and there's where you're at. And then you got to inch your way to the ideal. But you can't let not approaching the ideal keep you from actually going in that direction. So these are all things I'm sure Lloyd and Tommy have thought about. It's like, oh, I wish we had this, or if only rechargeable lasted longer. I can't imagine how aggravating that is in design, with all the limitations.
I've also learned over the years that companies have to make money or they'll no longer be in business to make new products. That's something that I've learned doing this over the last 10 years. And, also there's got to be a market for it. Because the thing that I just spoke about, another person will say, well, I don't want that. I want to use my pedal, so it won't work for me. So I totally get that as well. But at least I'm better now. At least I'm not just saying, give me a great sounding pickup with nothing in the guitar. At least I'm giving you like, give me a great sounding pickup with a battery thing in the pedal. At least I'm getting a bit more, it's getting a bit more manageable there. But leading into that, Barnstormer, would there be any benefit to using Voiceprint with AEG1? And I was thinking, how about we roll the AEG1 all to the hi-fi pickup without the mic, and you offer some sort of downloadable files for the Voiceprint that then you can use with the AEG1, some kind of crossover like that. Was that something that you've thought about?
Oh, like created in-house.
You could create them, yeah, and we can
Yeah.
install them on the Voiceprint and use it with our AEG1.
Yeah, that would be an option. Sure.
But I mean, I would suggest using something like the Voiceprint with AEG1 as an EQ, just to go in there and shape the sound that you might want that you're not getting. Like you take some low end out, boost some frequencies you want to hear. I think EQ is underused. As much as I love plug and play, and many acoustic players do, we do need to use EQ, at least for the room, if not the sound that we're trying to do.
Absolutely. I feel like EQ is more room, remedial sound system and room related. There's no such thing as two sound systems that are ideal or perfect. Rooms aren't perfect. There's problems everywhere. And I think one of the things that maybe a lot of people don't understand about the Voiceprint, there's a crazy amount of EQ available in that. There are two stackable 6-band, fully parametric EQs in that thing that you can store EQ presets from, and the EQs are beautiful. The Voiceprint pedal itself runs at 96 and 24, so it's a very high fidelity studio quality sound. And if you never even use it for a Voiceprint, it's a fantastic EQ.
I like EQs like that. I like EQs where you can really do whatever cue you want, and I do a lot of cuts and high cut, just to shape the sound that's in your head. Really enjoying the discussion. Appreciate your time. My Duet is getting installed this week. So a lot of people getting pickups installed this week. I would love you to come back to my show on Monday and let me know what you think of it, because we're in this in-between time now where I've been playing it on the channel. People have just got them. They're being installed this week by their techs. And then I'd love people to come on the stream next Monday or the Monday after and let me know in the chat what you think about the system. Now once you've had a chance to try it. It's an exciting time to share that.
I want to say something about that. If you do run into any issues or if it's not ideal, to please contact us, because we've ran into installs. Lloyd has ran into a few frustrating installs that took a long time to get right. And we want to help every customer be really happy with their sound, and don't just give up if you have any issues. Please contact us.
I'd like to share this because Red Hat Aaron didn't mention this, but I think it's quite valuable information. When I asked him what he thought about the system, he says he's very happy with it. But he said to me that he feels the hi-fi and the hi-fi Duet is brighter than the actual standalone hi-fi. So is that right, or is that something to do with the way that it's been installed, Mike? Because I mentioned it to you earlier.
Yeah, so what came to mind, I'm not sure if that was on the same guitar and he swapped it out. But if the hi-fi pickups aren't making complete surface contact, it could sound really bad. I haven't personally heard it myself. I've heard about it. But if it's not making complete contact, they could be real bright and shrill and lack low end.
So, and there's a bit of a sliding scale. I've had I had one musician's guitar come back to me that had this musician had already been using the hi-fi pickups, and I was installing a prototype version in one of our beta testers. I was installing a silo microphone into it, and I just thought the pickups sounded kind of screechy, and they're just too bright and too edgy. And so I popped the pickups off, and I learned that they weren't making full contact, and the adhesive that we use that's adhered to the pickup has a contact patch, and if you don't think the pickup sounds warm enough and nice enough and full enough, pop the pickup off, and you can actually, it'll leave a trace on the bottom of there'll be a shiny spot in the adhesive where it hasn't made contact with the bridge plate. And if you have as much as 10% shiny stuff on the bottom of your adhesive, you're not making full contact with it, and you're not getting the full richness and fullness out of the pickup that's possible.
So just to clarify, is the hi-fi at 50% tone the same sound as the hi-fi Duet hi-fi, or is it going to be different if you A/B them?
Oh, well, by the time you mix 50% microphone in, it's a whole different beast.
No, zero mic in the Duet versus a hi-fi at 50% tone, a neutral blend. Is that
He's talking about
I see. Yeah.
no effect, yeah.
Well, we've matched them as closely as possible.
Okay, so they are matched. Okay.
Yeah, we've matched them to the best of our ability.
Okay, that's good info for him.
There's certain differences in the electronics because in the hi-fi Duet, the pickups need to interact with a microphone, so like a whole nother source. But that's something we've A/B'd quite a bit, and I can say from what I hear, it's closer. I mean, the install is going to make way more of an effect than the difference in the circuits. The guitar is going to have way more effect. Like you and I have talked about, people worried about undersaddle pickups affecting their tone, and I always say, well, your arm brushing across the top as you're strumming is going to have way more effect to the tone. But we include, everybody that hasn't ordered it, we do include additional adhesive strips. And if you really, really want to have a great installation, the idea is to install the pickups, to remove them, and actually check for what Lloyd was saying. So yeah, you can get a great install on the first time you pop them on, but if you really want to do a thorough job, it's best to check that surface contact.
Cool.
Another thing that I would like to talk about as far as the string balance. String balance on the hi-fi pickups is pretty doggone good right out of the box. And if you stick them right between the bridge pins like we suggest, you're going to generally get pretty good results. But if you move them a little further apart, there's a millimeter in or a millimeter out more on each end. It's going to adjust the spectral balance a little bit. Like if you move it if it's a little shy on bass, or like for instance, if you feel like you've got a little too much mid-range and your outer strings are a little shy, well, move them apart a millimeter. If it's a little bit, if you feel like your middle couple of strings are in a little bit of a hole and your outer strings are a little too dominant, move them together a little bit. So that's why we like to have a professional installer, because they've been down this road and they understand that there's no two guitars that are alike, and to get the best out of everything, there's there's more experimentation involved in if you're looking for an optimum installation, you could luck out on the first time. You could, and I think the hi-fi has got more tolerance than any bridge plate pickup I've ever seen. But still, you can always, you can usually make it a little bit better than, so whenever I'm doing an install for an artist or myself, I'm going to put that thing in 5 or 6 times. I'm looking at 2 or 3 hours of educational fun until I get until I think I've gotten the most out of this system that can be had in that guitar. And so that's one of the reasons why we really like people to go to a professional installers, because they understand that dynamic.
Some do, but there's degrees of professional installers, of course.
That's true.
Some people just throw it in there and move on. Some people actually do what you're saying, Lloyd. So bear that in mind too.
Yeah. We had somebody relatively high level installer install hi-fi pickups for an artist, and there just wasn't enough room on the bridge plate. So they were out of options, but that's what the artist wanted them to install. Well, that's one of the screechy sounding guitars that you had to tackle, Lloyd.
Yeah.
The pickups were hanging 20% were hanging off the bridge plate, because there wasn't enough room. So like, in order to work with a guitar like that, there's a lot involved. You have to potentially build an extender to the bridge plate, make sure it's flat, consistent. There's a lot of work, but that's just on the outside of the bell curve of most guitars.
Yeah.
This is really good information. I kind of wish this information was earlier on. You should consider putting something like this on the LR Bags resources channel, like actually show examples of when you do it wrong, so people can hear that, because most people are just using the jig and installing it. And what I've heard is most people have had no problems with that. I mean, so that's a good thing. But what you're talking about here is really useful information that I've not heard people really talk about yet. So
that's why I was saying, like, if anybody has a less than ideal experience, well, we've ran into that ourselves, and we figured out ways to tackle it, or when we need to abandon it, right? There was a guitar, I wish I would have brought this up earlier, but there's a guitar, we're friends with this guy named Bones Owens out in Nashville. Had a J200 that had an Anthem in it, and I felt so bad. We shot a video session with him, and it just sounded bad. And so Lloyd's like, there's something wrong with that. So Lloyd, you could tell the rest of that story.
Yeah. So I'm on one of my trips to Nashville. I asked if we could have his guitar and if I could reinstall the Anthem in it. And so I got a brand new Anthem, reinstalled the whole system, pickup, microphone, everything. Still sounded like crap. I mean, there was nothing I could do. The system wasn't broken. It was just one of those really fringy guitars that that just didn't sound good with that particular pickup. I think didn't Bones just go on to put an M1 in there and he's happy with it?
No, that's
What
the
did he
weird
do?
thing.
What did he end up doing?
He either put the Element VTC or the Session VTC. I can't remember, but just going just to the Element for some reason worked, and we can't figure out why. We shot a video with that recorded direct, and I was like, I can't figure this guitar out.
We couldn't publish the video, and it was like it sounded so bad.
Well, we did 2 sessions with him where we had to cancel. Fortunately, the third session we did was the best, because we did that at Smokestack Studio with Paul Moak, and it's such a go check that out, and you'll hear, like, that's us trying to tackle a problem that even we couldn't understand. And then sometimes the solution is not expected. Like, we just throw an Element VTC and it works. Like, it's strange.
A great test now would be to put the Hi-Fi Duet in that same guitar.
Well, that's funny. We put the Hi-Fi Duet in another guitar of his. So that session, it's Bones Owens, LR Bags. Just type in LR Bags on YouTube, Bones Owens, and you'll hear that session. It has the Hi-Fi on one guitar and the Element, I believe, VTC on another guitar. You can compare them. It's not the same guitar, but you'll get an idea of the difference.
This is a good question. Can we expect the Hi-Fi Duet for the classic? I see there's not a version yet for classical guitars. Is that something you're working on, or is that just not possible with the design of this system?
Well, I don't want to say it's not possible, but it's a train wreck in a classical guitar.
The regular Hi-Fi.
Regular Hi-Fi is just, we were all excited about it. We thought, oh, this is going to be great for classical. It is useless. I can't tell you exactly. I don't understand the physics of it, but it is a train wreck. I mean, regardless of how we voiced it, classical guitars and nylon string guitars and steel string guitars are so different. They might as well be a different species. So usually what works well for a nylon string guitar is going to be not so good on a steel string, and vice versa. Our Anthem for nylon string is really voiced differently than our steel string. But yeah, we really tried to make the hi-fi pickups work on a nylon string guitar, but whew,
I
they're
remember
they
I remember playing one in
horrible.
Bo's office, and I was like, "That's not that bad." And then I look at his 31 band EQ, and he's like, "That's with the EQ engaged," and it was like
Wow.
That's
all over the
all
place. I
over
was
the
like,
place. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
But,
"Oh my gosh!"
are you working on this now, or is it just not on the cards yet?
Nope.
No?
No, it's
Okay.
like it's the nature of the pickup. It has to do with the well, a good nylon string guitar, the top is at least twice as sensitive as on a steel string guitar because there's so little string energy from a nylon string compared to steel strings. So the top has to be way more sensitive. So and so there's some crazy resonances on the instrument, and by the time you get finished trying to cut them out, there isn't a whole lot left. So we've basically given up on the nylon string guitar with the hi-fi.
So what should they do? Like, there's an Anthem classical, right?
Yeah, and actually, we work with Ramirez Guitar a couple of years over the last couple of years to revoice an Anthem SL classical, and I think it sounds spectacular. And so
Mm.
did they. They've adopted it. So that right now is the best thing that we offer for a nylon string guitar, and I'm really proud of it. I think it's spectacular.
All right. I was just mentioned this. Someone said 2 or 3 hours of educational fun that reminds me why I ended up super gluing my I-beam in my D28. I'm sure this is going to come up about. I mean, I love the fact that this is all peel and stick and you can remove it all. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's going to be people that want to glue this stuff in. What are your thoughts on gluing in the hi-fi Duet permanently? No,
Mm-mm.
don't do it.
This is
You're
gonna
gonna
sound
you'll just you'll destroy. Not only will you mess up your bridge plate, possibly irretrievably, but the pickup is going to be a train wreck. It's not voiced for that. You're going to be really unhappy. Don't do it, please.
there's a lot more behind that. Some information that is proprietary, but people think, sometimes if a company says that, like it gets them more excited to try it. But it will just be honest with you, it's going to sound terrible. It's going to overdrive. It's going to be bad.
Okay, so the message is if any problems, reach out to you guys with the install. Should be able to do it yourself. I was thinking, I know that like Sweetwater is stocking this, and I know they've already sold out, but they have a technical department that's very good. I mean, have you thought about
Oh,
having
yeah.
training? Have you thought about training them? Because for example, I could go on there and order a D28 and have them install the Hi-Fi Duet before it even shipped out to me. Have you considered something like that? A partnership like that?
We've talked about it, but we haven't acted on it yet.
Mm.
Like you're talking about, there's some great installers out there,
And
and
there's
some
many
not
that
so
are
great.
not.
There's not so great
No, no,
installers.
no. There's
So,
there's
so
there's
some,
there's one or two great installers, and no, I'm being mean. But it is when you go to installer, you've got to trust them. They've got to want to take that extra time. So I just think it'd be kind of nice if there was a place where they knew what they were doing and would take that extra time and that care to give you a good install. But I know it's
I
hard.
would say for now, so we have a couple texts here. You can either ask for Caleb or Matt. That's really important right now since it's a brand new rollout. We had to pull the installation video that usually coincides with a product launch, so we have to change that. So we don't currently have the installation video, and the installation instructions can be daunting. There's a lot of steps involved. So I want to make sure everybody has a good experience. So feel free. We're happy to take calls. You'll always get a person if you call our company.
yeah, for sure.
Well, that's great. I think it's a good place to wrap things up. I just want to say straight away, thank you to both of you for both supporting what I'm doing here, because it's been a great month for me on the channel. I've still got more to do about the new systems and the guitar. And thanks for your time today. We've actually managed to do way over 2 hours of talking about acoustic guitar pickup systems.
Oh, that's
Thanks for
fantastic.
having us.
Well, yeah,
Great.
we really
I love it.
really appreciate you having us on the show, Aaron, and being able to,
Thank you. And I
talk
hope to see you
to.
in person at NAM. You'll be at NAM, right? in
You know
January.
it.
Yeah, it's always
And-
fun. We're very enthusiastic about what we do, so it's always fun to have somebody as an end user be so enthusiastic for acoustic and acoustic amplification. It's something we can relate to. Not everybody, like Lloyd was saying, some people just want to entertain, they want to plug and go. But if you knew what went into the designs of our products and the obsessive stuff, that little details that might not even translate to people's understanding out in the market, it's kind of freakish.
Well, I want to do both. I think a lot of people don't realize. I think a lot of people watch my videos and just see me talking about pedals and pickups. They don't realize that my thing is to actually go out and play 4 or 5 nights a week, and it has been for 30 years. And in the early days, I didn't care about that stuff. I just plugged straight in, and I was focused on my performance and the song. But as time has gone on, you know, I've obviously become a fan of gear as well. But I've just wanted to create the best sound that I can, and I think it's going to get bigger now. Like I said at the start of this stream, I see more and more people doing the solo thing now, and there are no drums or guitars to hide up the tone. Like, your guitar is everything. Your guitar is and your voice is all you have. And when you, and the looping thing is huge now, and I just think and I'm glad, because that's what I love to do. I think that's a great thing. But I want to say again, thank you, because not many companies release anything acoustic. And once again, I want just to shout out other companies. There's been a lot of releases for acoustic guitar this year, and I'm really, really happy about it. But the fact that you've released a new pickup and a guitar, thank you for doing that, because a lot of people just don't seem to really care about pushing the envelope. And I'm glad that you guys are doing that. So,
Well, thanks. That makes getting up in the morning worthwhile. You know, if you're not moving the bean, you know, what are you doing?
so I'll give you a week, and then I'll call you up, Lloyd, and ask you what's coming out next.
All right.
I just want to say before we go, if you're new here and you do like this kind of content, please subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't. It really helps me out. There we go. I'm here Mondays for the live stream. Please join me over the next couple of weeks if you do get the AEG one or the Hi-Fi Duet, and tell me in the chat what you think of it. That'll be great information. And then Mike and Lloyd can watch the replays as well and see what you think about it. If you've got any problems, though, do reach out to them. I think that's great that you're so accessible and they can do that. Once again, thank you. And I've still got more stuff to come. I haven't even done my final review yet. I want to really take my time. So I'll have some more videos on these as well. So do subscribe and ring the bell. I'll also have other stuff coming up as well, all the way up to NAMM, where hopefully there'll be even more things to talk about. I hope we can do another chat like this at NAMM, Lloyd. We had a great chat last year about guitar building. It was great. Yeah, so good. All right, everyone's saying thank you. I know I've missed some questions, but I really have to end it here. Hopefully we can do this again in 6 months or something. In fact, it'd be nice to do this again once people have actually playing your stuff. Because again, we're in that in-between period right now where most people here haven't played these new releases. So perhaps we can do another one in the new year and actually ask people what they think about the stuff now they're gigging with it. That'd be great.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to.
All right. So thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Rosanna and Lee for moderating the chat. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
String today, vintage wood, shiny frets, strumming blues while the sun fades. All these guitars, can't help myself. Why can't I quit this ever-growing need? Oh man, goddamn, bought another 6-string today, vintage wood, shiny frets, strumming blues while the sun fades. All these guitars, can't help myself. Why can't I quit this ever-growing need?